What is up, fight fans? UFC 284 in Perth, Australia goes down in a couple of weeks from now. And I want to give my breakdown and prediction for two of the big fights on that card. We got the co-main event, the interim featherweight championship between Yair El Pantera Rodriguez and Josh Emmett. And then we got the main event, champ versus champ in the lightweight division, the lightweight champ versus the featherweight champ, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. The battle for the pound for pound number one spot. Pound for pound number two, Islam. Pound for pound number one, Volkanovski. These are going to be some very interesting matchups. And I want to start with the co-main event because the co-main event will determine who will be next for the featherweight champion, Alexander Volkanovski. The winner of this will come out the interim champion and the number one contender in the featherweight division. We'll finally have a different number one contender, not named Max Blessed Holloway, which is definitely going to feel a little bit weird. But we know the winner of this is guaranteed a title shot, although it depends. If Volkanovski wins, does he come back to featherweight? Then the winner of this could end up being the undisputed champ. But nonetheless, let's get into this prediction. Yair Rodriguez, Josh Emmett. Who gets this done? The outcome of this matchup is going to boil down to a few things. So Josh Emmett has a wrestling base, and that has sort of been known to be a weakness in Yair's game. You know, take down the fence, dealing with wrestlers. Frankie Edgar exposed that in 2017. Jeremy Stevens somewhat capitalized on that weakness, although it was mainly due to Yair slowing down. Emmett can definitely use his wrestling in this fight. He's definitely going to need it because Yair is a crafty, tricky, and dangerous striker. But also Josh Emmett has a lot of power on the feet, a big right hand and a big left hook. And Emmett can also use the threat of his wrestling to set up his strikes on the feet to put the power on Yair Rodriguez. But can Yair Rodriguez potentially take away the wrestling of Josh Emmett and evade that power? I mean, it's very possible. Yair Rodriguez is very elusive on the feet, and he just has a lot more tools to work with. He's better with kicks than Josh Emmett, and he uses kicks more frequently than Josh Emmett. And Yair's kicking game is so lethal. This guy can kick you from anywhere. He can hurt you to the body with his kicks. He can set you up to the head. He can make you think he's going to kick to the body, and then he can come up high. And he can use those long legs as well to keep that distance, with a potential teep kick to keep Emmett at range. And then that can create enough space for Yair to land something even more devastating on Josh Emmett. But even apart from this guy's kicks, Yair's boxing is something that has came a long way as well. So his hands are kind of nice now as well as his kicks. So he could also piece Josh Emmett up, not just out-kick Josh Emmett. Like in the striking, I think Yair Rodriguez, he pieces Josh Emmett up. So Emmett is going to need to wrestle in this fight against Rodriguez in order to win. And I do think if Emmett is smart, he is going to go back to his wrestling. He's not going to come in this fight with that same, sprawl and brawl style. Use the wrestling to keep the fight standing and bang it out. That's just not going to work against someone as tricky and as creative and as versatile as Yair Rodriguez. So I do think he is going to try to wrestle. But I do think Yair is going to use that range and that footwork to make it difficult for Emmett to find those takedowns. Which is going to lead to Emmett being forced in a stand-up battle against Yair Rodriguez. And I do think Yair has massively improved from that Frankie Edgar fight 6 years ago. I think he's going to be a lot harder to take down than he was back then. So even if Emmett does get a hold of him, Yair could use them long legs to stay upright, to keep that balance against Josh Emmett and then get off the cage. But then even if he does get taken down, Yair Rodriguez, his ground game is something that's improved. He's actually kind of getting better off of his back. So he could defend himself on the ground against Emmett, threaten submissions, maybe use the threat of the subs to stand back up and force the striking on Josh Emmett. So I ultimately do favor Yair Rodriguez to win this fight against Emmett. I think he'll have an answer for the wrestling. I think he'll be able to see that overhand of Josh Emmett from a mile away. He'll be able to evade the left hook because Emmett will throw that as well. And I just think he'll be able to pick Emmett apart in the stand-up and eventually find a finish against Josh Emmett with one of those kicks. I think he'll kick him to the head and get a knockout roundhouse kick to the dome, or maybe a front kick to the chin. And I'll say he catches Emmett probably in the second or third round. But I think Yair will come out the new interim champ in the featherweight division, and he'll be the next man in line to face Alexander the Great Volkanovski when he comes back to featherweight. All right, now moving on to the main event of the evening for the lightweight championship of the world. Not just that, for the pound for pound number one spot. Who will be pound for pound number one? Islam Makhachev or Alexander the Great Volkanovski? Volkanovski's already pound for pound number one, but that spot is on the line. Because if he loses this fight, he is no longer the number one guy, but at least he keeps his featherweight crown. But Volk is attempting to make history and become one of the many double champs in UFC history. And the second featherweight champion to win a lightweight belt, hold the featherweight and lightweight belt consecutively, simultaneously, like Conor did back in 2016. But he's got an uphill battle to face against a guy like Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev has been undefeated for the last 8 years, but Volkanovski has been undefeated for the last 10 years. So these guys are one-loss wonders who have not lost in the past decade. Both these men have been looking absolutely unstoppable and dominant ever since their last defeats. No one since has been able to solve that puzzle of Islam or Alexander Volkanovski. But on February 11th, something has got to give. Someone's win streak must come to an end. But whose win streak is going to get snapped next weekend? Is it going to be Alex the Great? Or will it be Islam Makhachev? Both men, in their dominant runs, Volk in featherweight and Islam in lightweight have been puzzles that no one has ever been able to solve in the last decade. With Islam, we know what he does best. He's basically like the second coming of Khabib. Everyone knows what he wants to do. It's no secret that Makhachev, his goal is to go in there, take you down, ragdoll you, and smash you, but there's nothing that you can do about it. Volkanovski's game is a little bit more tricky than Islam Makhachev, and he is very hard to beat because Alexander Volkanovski is an amazing striker with the ability to negate your offense, completely shut your game down, and just absolutely pick you apart in the stand-up department. But that good stand-up is also backed by Volkanovski's really good wrestling game. He can take you down, ground and pound you, but then he can even use his wrestling base to keep the fight standing and dominate with his striking. And Alexander Volkanovski is also very powerful as well. He's an absolute juggernaut in the featherweight division. Just an absolute tank of a man. Tremendously strong, even for a featherweight as well. And also elite fight IQ. Very smart fighter. And I believe in the featherweight division, in the lightweight division, I think Alexander Volkanovski might be 10 times more dangerous than what he is at featherweight. Because at lightweight, I believe he's going to be even stronger, faster, and more powerful than he already is at 145 pounds. Something for Islam Makhachev to look out for in this matchup. Islam definitely does not want to mess around with the striking of Alexander Volkanovski. His striking is much better than Charles Oliveira, and he'll definitely pack more heat in his hands. And if he catches Islam Makhachev with that big right hand, there's a huge possibility that Volk might be that first man since 2015, since Adriano Martins to knock Makhachev out. Very possible we could be seeing an upset. However, Makhachev himself is a very smart fighter, and he's very good at playing the fights to his strengths and not at his opponents'. He's good at taking the path of least resistance. He's not going to strike with you if he doesn't have to, or if he knows that there's too great of a threat on the feet. He's not going to give you that chance. He's definitely not going to give Alexander Volkanovski that chance. And honestly, it's easier for me to see Islam shutting down Volk's game than for me to see Volkanovski shutting down Islam's, because everyone has the game plan of defending takedowns of Makhachev and imposing their striking, but so far no one's been able to do it. If Islam gets people down, they do not get back up. Will Volkanovski be any different from any of Islam's past victims? I really don't know, honestly. One thing about Volk that does make him dangerous for Makhachev as well, not just his stand-up and his power, but Volkanovski is very composed and he has a lot of heart. And that composure of Alexander Volkanovski, that ability to stay calm, allows him to adapt through adversity and to make adjustments, to swing the fight in his favor. You know, we've seen this in the second Max Holloway fight. Volkanovski is not going to go away that easily. He's always going to be in the fight. He's always going to be dangerous. He's always going to be thinking his way through tough situations. But as long as Islam Makhachev does not get too overconfident or too complacent, if he stays disciplined, he should be able to win this fight against Alexander Volkanovski, because I don't really think Volk is going to be able to deal with the size and the strength and the wrestling of Islam Makhachev. I don't see it happening, honestly. Yeah, Volk could definitely catch Islam Makhachev. That is very possible. But Islam Makhachev has good striking defense. He's not going to take any crazy chances to get himself in trouble on the feet. He's going to go right to the takedowns of Alexander Volkanovski once he finds an opening. And once he gets a hold of Volk, I think that's game over, honestly. Like, Volk will stay calm on the ground. He's not going to panic, but it doesn't matter. He's going to be giving up bottom position and control time. And I just think it's going to repeat every round. Round one, Islam gets a takedown, controls Volk, and Volk isn't able to get back to his feet. Round two, it's going to be the exact same thing. Islam will get a takedown. It's inevitable. You know, people talk about Volk's good takedown defense, but I mean, Brian Ortega was able to take him down. Chad Mendes took him down quite a few times, and at one moment, Mendes even took his back, had the body triangle. And I can only imagine if Islam Makhachev has him in that position, it's not going to be like the Mendes fight. With the size and the strength of Makhachev, he's not getting away. Makhachev could step over into mount, and Volk could then even be in more trouble. Islam could then ground and pound him from the mount, or maybe get an arm triangle. Maybe he can even get an armbar, a triangle armbar from the mount. Khabib versus Gaethje style. I mean, who is this guy's takedown defense good against? Max Holloway, who shot a couple of times, a striker. He's never dealt with someone with the wrestling of Makhachev. So ultimately, I favor Islam Makhachev to win this fight. I think he'll sub Volkanovski inside 3 rounds. And that long win streak of Alexander Volkanovski finally comes to an end. We're finally going to see Alexander Volkanovski lose very soon. In the next week or so, he's going to get that second loss on his record because he's facing Islam Makhachev. I believe he could become double champ against anyone else at lightweight. He's got the skills to. But Islam, his style, it's way too imposing. It's way too hard to stop. And I just don't see Volkanovski with his style being the one to do it. However, Volkanovski will still remain a dominant force at featherweight. And Islam will be a dominant force for many years to come at lightweight. But that's it for my breakdown and prediction for UFC 284, the 2 title fights on this card. Let me know your predictions in the comment section down below. Who do you have winning? Yair or Emmett, Volkanovski or Islam Makhachev? Like and subscribe, and peace.